kids growing up in America or in some other Western countries, when they were asked who liberated the Nazi concentration camps in Eastern Europe, in Poland, they won't hesitate in saying that it's the American soldiers. But in fact, it's the Red Army of the Soviet Union. Anti-communism took precedence over anti-fascism since 1945, and therefore China and Russia became this forgotten ally of the West. We're living in this fragmented world, divided largely by the communist sphere of influence versus, the NATO-led West. At this point in time, what do you make of the commemorative event happening in Moscow at this juncture of history?
In the immediate aftermath of World War II, the French people were asked which country contributed most to the defeat of Nazi Germany and the liberation of France. And at the time, it was something like 90% of the French people recognized that the Soviet Union did the lion's share of the work in that regard. And in the modern day, that number has fallen to the low teens. Showing how much of a distortion of history. There is a very active rewriting of history that includes a modern geopolitical demonization, first of the Soviet Union, continuing now with Russia. And we can also talk, of course, about China in the eastern side of the conflict, being demonized, not forgotten, but excised from memory and actively rewritten into a more modern Western geopolitical interpretation of history. Why is 80 so important? Part of the reason it's so important is because there's so few living veterans of that conflict left, right? That we can still honor their sacrifice today. The next round number we hit, there may not be any left that can be celebrated in the living flesh. It will only then be memory. And that is why the presence of the Russian and the Chinese president together mourning, the cost must not be forgotten, because that could lead to a repetition.